Hi everyone, and welcome to the Key Queries in Connect Carolina and InfoPort That You Should Know presentation. This presentation was given at the OSR Symposium that was held on Friday, July 29th, 2016. My name is Susan McDonough, and I'm going to be walking us through this presentation today. One thing before we start on the reports and queries I'm going to talk about is that there is a companion reference that would be useful for you to just have available as you listen to this recording, because it lists all the reports and queries that I'm going to talk about and where to find them on CC Info. So all of these resources are listed or reside on the CC Info website. And if you go to the website and then click Resources and then Search Resources, down the left-hand side of this resource are the exact keywords that you should search by. And then this resource also lists what that report is showing you and then a direct link. So as I go forward in this presentation, I'm going to cite each of these references so you know what matches with what. Okay. Also, both this PowerPoint presentation and the quick reference card that I just mentioned are posted on CC Info under at these links. But if you key in useful reports and queries for research administrators, you will find these two reference documents. Okay. So the topics we're going to cover are: how do I find open requisitions, purchase orders, and vouchers on a project? How do I know if a voucher, that's a voucher to an external vendor, has been paid? How do I see payments from sponsors? So that's, for example, the federal government or the NIH. How do I know that I've received a payment from them from a grant? Next, where do I find payroll accounting information? And by that I mean payroll accounting entries that were made either from a payroll run or an adjustment to a payroll that you had to do in between payroll runs. That's what that means. Next, how do I find cash balances? So if you are managing project where it's important at a certain point in time to see what the cash balance is, we're going to look at a few ways to see that. That will be followed by how do I find budget balances, different from cash balances, and in there I'm going to talk about what the difference between a cash balance and a budget balance is. And then finally, I'll talk about what's the plan for reporting for the research community. So some of the reports that I'm going to walk us through today are available right now, and some of them are in the final or almost final stages of being available. And so I will share what those reports are and when we can expect to see them in production. Okay. So before I start with the first bullet, I just want to get this idea sort of out of the way. A couple of reports that I'm going to mention fall under this category of what we call enhanced reporting access, so I just want to clarify what that means. There are certain reports that are limited access because of the type of information that they show. And so most of the reports that we have are available campus-wide, but there are a limited number that are not. And so how that kind of works as far as getting access to those is the first key thing to know is that it is restricted, and the access is only given out to those who need to know. And it's the MOU lead that determines who should have that access. And it's intentionally cut small as the number of people that have this access. So if you are an MOU lead and you need to add or remove a person from this list, what you do is you submit a help request to the finance team on Connect Carolina, and they manage that. If you're a person out there and you think that you need this access and you don't have it to some of the reports that I'm going to be talking about, then you would discuss that with your MOU lead. And if you're new and you're not quite sure who your MOU lead is, there is a list on this link on this website, on the finance website that I've listed here, and it will say by school or division who your MOU lead is. All right, so that's what we mean by enhanced reporting access. It's intentionally cut small, and it's really determined by the MOU lead who gets that access. All right, so the first item we're going to talk about is how can I see if I have open requisitions, open purchase orders, or unposted vouchers on a project. And I know this is really important when you're getting ready to close out a project particularly, and also just on an ongoing basis. You should always be managing your transactions and making sure that they're completed and that they don't have any errors. You don't want at any time just transactions sitting out there if they've got issues with them. So the first point about this point is that there are 3 queries that, as I'm recording this presentation, are not currently available, but they should be available soon. Today is August 5th, 2016, so they should be available within the next week or 2. And these are 3 different queries, one each to show 1, open requisitions on a project, 2, open purchase orders on a project, and 3, unposted vouchers on a project. So it's very specifically designed for you to quickly and efficiently search by project and see if you've got anything open, all right, coming out very soon. In the meantime, I do want to make you aware of some other tools that we have that you should just know anyway as far as, you know, what's available and how the system works, but they can also get you this information while we wait for these queries to come out. And that is this list of queries that we put together last year to make this all visible here. As we were preparing for fiscal year end, we created quite a few queries for the purpose of looking at all your finance transactions and seeing what was in error, either edit error, budget error, or hadn't been posted yet. The thing about this list is they're very useful, but it's quite a long list. So what I would recommend is there's one query on there that's very close to what you will have with the unposted queries that you could use in the meantime. And that's this one right here, NC_AP_unposted vouchers. So if you go to your quick reference card that I mentioned at the very beginning, the first item on there is going to be this preparing for year-end close document. It's listed on CC Info, and it lists all the queries I'm talking about, and it has this query included in the list. And so why I'm pointing out this particular query is that it's a good starting point for looking at your vouchers. And it will tell you everything that's not complete. And then from there, if you have anything on that list, you can then dig further into the whole other list of queries that we have, because the broader list of queries lists by transaction, by type of error. So if you start out here and see, gosh, I've got 10 vouchers open on this project, let me dig a little further and see, do they have edit errors? I can run the edit error query specifically to see edit errors. Or then I can run specifically the budget error query to see voucher with budget errors. So this is a way to start off broad, see what you have, and then use the list of queries to drill down further where you need to, rather than just running all 25 queries or so really not in a very focused manner. All right, and just a reminder that this document that I just said does have the instructions for how to run a query if you need a refresher on those steps. And also, if you haven't ever run a query or you want a refresher, we do have a class called Queries for Cleaning Up Transactions that we can run by request. We offer it on a very scheduled basis as we approach a year end. We can also run it throughout the year if we need to. All right. The next thing I want to draw your attention to that would be like an additional way to see if you've got open purchase orders. Again, the 3 queries that are going to be available very soon will show you open purchase orders. This is another way that's available now. It's also just something it's good to know that this is an available tool to you, is that you can see through the Budgets Overview page in Connect Carolina whether you have an open encumbrance. Okay, and so the way you do that is you would go into Connect Carolina and navigate through this tab, Finance menu, Commitment Control, Review Budget Activities, and Budgets Overview. So you would get to your Budgets Overview page, and this is what it would look like. And from here, what you want to do and what you're looking for is whether you have an open encumbrance, which means an open purchase order on a project. And so what the system wants you to do is first enter a description, and you can put in any description that you want. And then put in the ledger group, which, because we're talking about research here, we want to put in OSR parent. And then down here with your chart fields, you want to put the project ID that you're inquiring about in the project ID from and to field. Go ahead and enter it in both places. And then you would click the search button up here, okay? So 3 fields, well technically 4 that we completed. And once you click the search button, then what appears is this screen right here. This is giving you your budget information. So I'm saying that I've got about $500,000 on this budget. I've spent about $400,000. And then I've got an amount under the encumbrance column. And that anytime you see a non-zero amount, in other words, anything except 0 in the encumbrance column or in the pre-encumbrance column, which I stopped the screenshot of the encumbrance because that's what I wanted to focus on. But out here to the right, you have pre-encumbrance, and then you have your available budget balance. But right here, because I have an amount in my encumbrance column, it means that I still have an encumbrance out there. And so to see the purchase order related to that open encumbrance, I can click on this amount. All these amounts are hyperlinks that bring you to the detail that make up that amount. So I would click on this 9,655 and it would open this page, all right? And then from there, I want to mark this checkbox that says Display Open Encumbrances Only. Mark that checkbox, click OK, and then what's left are all your open encumbrances. In other words, all your open purchase orders, meaning you've got on your project things that aren't complete yet. So if you're getting close to that project end date, you know, you've got some work to do. You got to figure out what you're going to do with this purchase order. Now, notice that I've got 4 lines here, and the 3 lines here are from 2014, and were I to scroll out to the right here, if I were in the live system, you would see that those amounts are 0. So it's possible that you might see those if you use this page to look at your open encumbrances. Those are from when we went live back in 2014, and some converted purchase orders that we brought over, and just from the way we process them, they're still showing here, but it doesn't mean that those encumbrances are still open. So if you see rows on your projects that date to this, 2014 with an amount of 0, you can just ignore it. But you can't ignore, this is a real purchase order right here. It has a real amount out to the right, and it's something that you need to be managing. All right? So that is one way to see if you have open purchase orders and how you can actually get to the purchase order ID. All right. The key point is that look out for an announcement coming very soon about the queries that are going to become available. All right. And so the next point is, how can I tell if a voucher has been paid? All right. So there are 3 ways. Like a lot of things in Connect Carolina and InfoPort, there's more than one way to look at or find the information you're looking for. And that's certainly true of seeing if a voucher to an external vendor has been paid. So I'm going to share 3 ways. One is queries. There are 2 queries here, and these queries are also on that same reference that I mentioned a couple slides ago. Preparing for year-end close, reviewing open transactions, these queries are on that document as well. The next one is the InfoPort Transactions tab has a way you can see payment information, and then there's an inquiry page. And let me go through each of these, or all 3 of these, in a little bit more detail. So first, these 2 queries. The first query, they both show the different sides of the coin. This query shows vouchers that haven't paid or have been partially paid. So if I run this, this is an example of a row that you would see. We had a payment to the National Academy of Sciences for $300. You can see that in the paid amount and paid gross amount that we're still at zeros. Okay, so that means that it has not been paid. So a quick way to see things that haven't been fully paid in sort of group fashion is to run this query. All right. The other query shows the opposite, the vouchers that have been paid or partially paid. So another row example, you can see that the payment amount is $216. The amount we are expected to get paid up here, the sum amount, is also $216, so we can see that, you know, that has been paid. All right, so those are your queries. That would be a good way to start if you wanted to just get the full list of things that hadn't been paid, and then you can drill down from there to individual vouchers if you wanted to. All right. Second way I'm going to talk about to see whether your vouchers have been paid or not is from the InfoPort Transactions tab. If you go to this tab and search by the chart field that you're looking for, you know, whatever the chart field string was on the voucher, you can enter that. You can search broadly or more narrowly. I would search just by AP voucher in the trans type field because that'll narrow down. It's only this trans type that is going to show you payment information. So I would narrow down your search at least by selecting AP voucher, and then you can select filters up here according to what it is that you're looking for, whether it's a specific chart field string, whether it's your whole department, whether it's for 1 month or 3 months or whatever the case might be. When you click search and get your search results, this is an example of a row in the search results, and so you can see here's a voucher. I've got my voucher ID, my invoice ID, etc. In the reference 1 field is where I have my payment information. So if the voucher has been paid, you will see numbers in the reference 1 field. If the voucher has not been paid, then you will see nothing in the reference field. It'll be blank space. So right now, again, today is August 5th, 2016. If you were to go in today, what this reference 1 field is showing you is the reference payment number, which is either the check number or the ACH number, with the underscore followed by the system-generated reference number. The system-generated reference number is slated to change to actually be the payment date. So be on the lookout for this to be the check number underscore payment date. This system-generated reference number is something that the system generates, and it's not really something that ties back to anything we use for reporting purposes or that you would use for reporting purposes. So we don't really need to have it on our screen. All right, so that's the second way to see payment information. So far we've got the 2 queries and then the info port transactions tab. And then the third way is the voucher inquiry page in Connect Carolina, which is a very nice page because it allows you to search for as many or as few vouchers as you want. It allows you to put in ranges for most of the search fields, like from a date range or a voucher ID range, etc. But when you search for your voucher, this is what the search results look like. You get a list of vouchers according to the search criteria you entered. And then under the payment information column, coincidentally, is where the payment information is. So if you click on this $sign, then this row is going to show up for that voucher and give you the payment information. And what it's going to give you is, whether under this voucher paid amount column, it'll tell you what's been paid, and then you see a payment status that says paid. And then the payment reference ID is kind of like that proof that the voucher has actually been paid. So if it hadn't been paid, you just wouldn't see this information in this row, or the payment status would say not paid, or so you wouldn't see exactly what you're seeing here. Okay, so those are 3 different ways to see whether your voucher has been paid. Which one you use depends on you. If you're already in InfoPort and you're looking at your transactions anyway, you could just use that to, look at your payment information. If you were just going in to do a single search for one-off, maybe to answer a question from a vendor or something, you might want to use the voucher inquiry page. It's kind of, you have options there. All right, the next point is, how can I see payments from sponsors? And payments from sponsors, I mean, are the sponsor of the overall grant. We're talking NIH or the federal government or the North Carolina state government. That's a sponsor. And so what we have to give us this information, which is kind of new, is this a report called the OSR Payments Report. And the first thing I want to say about this report is that it uses a tool called SAS Web Report Studio, right? So this is kind of a new tool in the last month or two. We've put out a couple reports already that use this tool, so I just want to talk to it a minute. It is different from what's called the SAS VA reporting tool, which if you use the Comprehensive Financial Summary Report, there's some other reports that we have that use, and some of the HR reports also use that tool. It's also different from the Department Accounting tab way of searching. So SAS Web Report Studio is just something a little bit new. It's just one of those things, you just have to get used to how the navigation works and that kind of thing. But that's what this OSR Payments Report uses. And we do have some procedures online. So let me call your attention to, if you're moving down the list of this quick reference card, so far I have covered the financial reporting and reconciliation document. That is useful because it'll tell you where to find InfoPort transactions, as well as the reconciling quick reference card. That will give you how to sort of decipher the results on the transactions tab in InfoPort. The campus voucher document will show you how to do a voucher inquiry. And then the OSR Payments Report on that quick reference card is where we are right now. All right. So the OSR Payments Report, and again, there's procedures for this, and the link to that is found on the Payments quick reference card I mentioned at the beginning. You can search for it on CC Info. But what the OSR payments report shows is all payments that we've received from sponsors since we went live on October 1st, 2014. It starts from that point. And just one sort of comment about this report in terms of really encouraging you to use this report to see whether the payments you've gotten from sponsors are accurate, if anything's missing, that kind of thing. The Office of Sponsored Research has been working really hard to make sure payments have been received, to make sure that the money received on a project is sitting in the right chart field string on the right project. But like anything, the more sets of eyes we have on this information, the better. So if you get in the habit of running these reports for the projects you manage and see if anything doesn't look quite right that maybe OSR hasn't caught, you know, the two of you all working together will get us closer and closer to that 100% accuracy. So go ahead and use this report, especially for that purpose. OSR has set up this email address specifically for questions about what you're seeing on this payments report, so somebody's monitoring that just for this purpose. All right. So a couple of things about this payments report, and then I'll show you what one looks like, is that it shows your payment amounts and information in the form of a journal, like a GL journal that's entered into the general ledger. And so on the report, you're going to see the lines in one of four journal types. The first, these aren't in any particular order, but a payment journal would be a pure payment we got from a sponsor. It went directly to your project, and that's a payment journal. Maintenance journal is we received this money in, and then OSR made some kind of adjustment to either move that money from point A to point B, chart field string A, B. Most common scenario would be that we received this payment from the sponsor, but it wasn't clear or wasn't identified at that point where that money belonged, and so it had to sit on account until such time as they figured out where that money belonged, and then they put the money on the project. So that's a very common scenario for a maintenance journal. So you will see maintenance journals on your payments report. A direct journal is a payment we received from a sponsor, and there's no associated invoice to go with that payment. It was just money that we didn't send an invoice for. You will also see cash journals on the payments report. The cash journals are what's in the world of accounting called a balancing accounting entry to keep our cash balances accurate according to these payments that we have gotten in. So if you're determining the total sum of payments that you've gotten from your sponsor, you would sum these three journals, but the cash journals will zero out. So you can kind of ignore those, but you will see them probably, so I just wanted to mention that that's kind of a behind-the-scenes accounting entry to keep our cash balances accurate. All right, so here's an example of the output of a payments report. You can run this report, just a comment, in one of four ways. You can run it by contract or by specific project ID, and then for each one of those, you can run it at a summary or a detailed view. And let me tell you what that means. So in this search result, I've run this by contract, so you can see that my contract number is here, and then I've got 3 projects associated with this contract. And then because this is the summary view for that contract with all the projects, it's giving me the total sum of each type of journal that I've gotten. So this is a maintenance journal, this is a payment journal, this is that direct journal I was talking about, and then if I were to, CAF journal, and this is the direct journal that I was talking about. So if I wanted to do the summary view, what this is really telling me is for this project, I've basically gotten in, almost 886,000 and change in payment journals, and I've got negative 499,000 and change in maintenance journals. So if I were to sum these together, I could see that I've more or less have gotten 400,000 or so, from my sponsor. Okay, so that's the summary view. It gives you kind of a snapshot sum of how much you've gotten in by project or overall contract. And then the detail view will show you each individual journal. So the last one gave me one line for a total sum of all the payment journals. This is giving me all the payment journals. So if I look here, payment, 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 it's breaking it out and the amount of each one. So depending on what I needed to see, I could look at either the summary or the detailed view. Now again, we have procedures for how to run this report, how to fill in the filters and all of that. That is listed on your quick reference card. If you were to search by OSR payments report, you would see not just the procedures step-by-step written out, there's also a payments report, OSR payments report webinar that you can listen to and get a broader step-by-step of that report. Okay, next one, moving down the list. How do I find payroll accounting information? And again, by that I mean, how do I see the entries that were made either for pay runs themselves or adjustments that might have been made in between payrolls. So this is a report that just came out a couple weeks ago called the Payroll Accounting Report. Okay, and this report is found in InfoPort under Finance, Financial Reporting, and under Personnel. And here you have the Payroll Accounting Report. And what this shows, like I said, is all the accounting entries related to payroll, including any payroll runs and any adjustments. And here's an example of what a row on that report will look like. And you can imagine, depending on the criteria that you enter to run this report, you might get a lot of rows. But I want to go over some of the key columns on this output to draw your attention to the key information. One thing is this application journal ID, kind of similar to the OSR payments report. It's going to show your lines by type of journal. So there are 4 types of journals. One is the payroll journal, which is just a regular payroll. And by the way, this is not a real person. Tina Trainwell is not a real person, so you don't need to be wondering who's getting all that money. The next journal ID is a PAT. That would be an adjustment to a payroll using the PAT tool. Basically, these entries are either a normal payroll run or an adjustment. It's just that we had various ways that adjustments have been made since we went live. So PAT would be an adjustment that was made using the PAT tool. This X_retro would be this interim tool we had before we got PAT that was made for payroll adjustments. And then if you see a payroll adjust line, that was an adjustment redistribution that was made back in March, over a year ago in 2015, for the payrolls that are listed here to make a correction. So like I said, you'll either see the rows will either be a payroll or an adjustment to a payroll. Next column I wanted to point out was the expense type. In each row you'll have an expense type, and it's basically earnings, taxes or benefits, and then if you see benefits with an asterisk, It's literally a composite of these things, and severance pay, composite benefit fund, on-campus transit fee, and communication technology core fee. So it's like a bundle of those items. All right. The last thing I wanted to draw your attention to on this report is out to the right. You'll see, by that row what that represents in terms of effort percentage. And also be aware that this payroll accounting report shows normal earnings and from salaries and wages, and also stipends. Okay, so those are paid by either regular distributions or lump sum payments through UNC's payroll system. All right. Number 5, how do I find cash balances? So I'm going to talk about cash balances, and then I'm going to talk about budget balances right after that. And I can't really talk about those without talking about ledgers, and this might be repeat information for some of you. It's a good concept to really hammer down, and especially if we're talking about 2 different balances. That's all driven by ledgers. So I just want to introduce this piece with the concept of ledgers. So the point is that we have in Connect Carolina, and hence in our reporting, we have 2 ledgers where we record information. And the first, we'll talk about this first anyway, is the commitment control ledgers. And commitment control is kind of synonymous with budgets, but these commitment control ledgers are based on our budgets, how we budget. And really the purpose of the commitment control ledgers is a management tool for managing your day-to-day balances against a budget. And it tells you, at any given point in time, that balance reflects all transactions that you've entered into the system, regardless, that have passed budget checking, regardless of whether they're complete or not, or posted. So it gives you that minute-by-minute sort of look. But it's not the official book of record for external reporting purposes, and you'll see why in a minute. So that's the budget ledgers, the commitment control ledgers, sort of based on a budget, and it's driven by our budget checking process. The GL Actuals ledger is based on completed, posted transactions, so what's been fully processed through the system. And the GL Actuals ledger is what is our official book of record. So when accounting services needs to run a report, send it to the state, for example, or any of our campus departments need to send reports to, say, our foundations, they are always running that information out of the GL Actuals ledger. Okay, what's really helpful, I think, to understand this concept is just to take a look at how transactions are processed through the system. So you can see this graph is showing the steps that all transactions go through. And the first step is you enter in, or a transaction gets entered into the system. It goes through what's called an edit process, where it makes sure that the chart fields are correct and not missing any required information and so forth. Then it goes through this budget checking process to make sure that it's correct and complete from a budgeting standpoint. And at the point that your transaction passes budget checking, it is then reflected in the commitment control ledgers. And you will see that in your budget balances. And budget balances, that's when you look up things in InfoPort, which we'll show in a minute. But notice that the transaction still needs to be approved and it still needs to be posted. So that can take however long it takes to get your transactions approved. But once the transaction, like I said, it hits your budget balance. Once the transaction is posted, then it hits the GL Actuals ledger, and then the fund balance, which pertains to trust funds for the most part, is impacted, okay, to your actual fund balance. In addition to that, the payment process is separate from posting to the GL Actuals ledger. So when we pay a voucher, the payment also and the cash also gets updated in the GL Actuals ledger, but that affects your cash balance. So just because something's been posted to the GL Actuals ledger, until it's been paid, the payment affects the cash balance, and the cash accounts are also sitting in the GL Actuals ledger. So you have two ledgers, and you have three balances. You have commitment control ledgers, which affect your budget balance. You have GL Actuals ledgers, which at the time of posting affects what's called a fund balance. It tells you like the value of a fund. And then when something gets paid, the payment affects the cash. So just like your normal bank account. But then the cash balance is affected by payments, and the cash accounts are also sitting in the GL Actuals ledger. Okay, so bear that in mind as I talk about cash balances. All right, cash balances which are affected include posted transactions that have been paid. Two ways to see this. One is a tool called the GL Ledger Inquiry, which is available to everybody. And the second is a query that we have in what's called RPT, the RPT environment. What that means is we have the term environment means we have the live production environment. So if you were to log into Connect Carolina, you're seeing the live system. Sometimes we take a copy of the live system and move it off for a specific purpose. And that's what the RPT environment is. It's a copy of Connect Carolina that we use for reporting and some other purposes. So it's really like running the report out of Connect Carolina. It's just that it's a day behind the live information. So I'm going to show you both of these tools. So the GL Ledger Inquiry tool, which is listed on your handout in terms of where to find a reference for all the steps and all the explanation for using this tool. I'm going to show you a couple of slides that we have a more expanded procedure document to go step by step through this Ledger Inquiry, and also there's a webinar. But this GL Ledger Inquiry is a very, very useful tool. What it shows are balances based on the GL Actuals ledger. Okay, so the navigation to this tool is main menu, finance menu, general ledger, review financial information, and ledger. Okay. So this is showing you all transactions based on the GL Actuals ledger. The page opens, I fill in my criteria here pretty much like I've done. You want to put the actuals in the ledger field, the current fiscal year, and then from period 1 to 12, show year-to-date balances. When I want to see my cash, in the chart field value set, you want to enter what I've entered here, CPS claim on cash. And again, these steps are all outlined in the reference document. If you search on CC Info under GL Ledger Inquiry, you'll get more expanded explanation, but this is basically it in a nutshell. So CPS underscore claim on cash in the account chart field value set. Enter in your project ID under the project ID. Click this checkbox for project where it says sum by. And then what this is going to show you by accounting period. So as we move forward with the fiscal year, you'll see additional rows for each accounting period that has come and up to the current accounting period. You will see a balance for that period and then a year-to-date balance. So if I look at this, I can see I started off the year, period 0, with $831 in cash. And then after period 1, I was about $1,500 in the hole. So that brings me to a negative 600 and something balance for cash. Okay, and then as period 2 comes around, I'm going to see a running total for period 2 with a total year-to-date balance. So that's the GL Ledger inquiry and how you can use it to see cash. And the Fuller document will explain how you can use this page to see other things as well. The second tool that will show cash is this query in the RPT environment, and this is one of the reports I mentioned at the very beginning that does require enhanced access privileges. But if you have that, you'll be able to run this. And we do have documentation and that's listed on your reference, that lists all these queries and the navigation to get to them. It's called Financial Reporting Queries. But if I pull this query up and I enter in the search criteria for what I'm looking for, I'm looking for this project, and I want the cash balance. If I sum the rows in my search results, I get my cash balance. So if you look at this number, this is the exact same number that I got on the GL Ledger inquiry page. So it's giving you the same number, same information. So 2 ways to get to your cash balance. All right. Next is budget balance, and budget balances are based on my commitment control ledger. And this is what the Ledger Roll-Ups tab in InfoPort under the Department Accounting tab provide. They are all 100% based on the commitment control ledger. Okay, so let's just look at this for a minute. The default is a life to date for the OSR ledger here. That's where I see my budget balances for projects. The default for the fiscal year accounting period are a life-to-date picture. So if you don't do anything with this fiscal year and accounting period field, you're going to see a life-to-date balance for your project. If you needed to see a balance as of a previous date, say January or something, then you can change the fiscal year and accounting period accordingly. One thing to draw your attention to that was new with the 6.7.1 release is that you now can select either or if you want your balances to reflect payroll projections. You would mark this Show Projections checkbox, and that's going to project out your payroll expense for the remainder of the year, and we'll look at that in a minute. And then you can separately select whether you want to see soft encumbrances, what you have in soft encumbrances on the project. All right? And this is what your search results will show. So it's showing you my budget amount for my grand total, and if you've got any cost share activity, it shows that. How much I have in pre-encumbrances, encumbrances, expenses life to date, and then a life-to-date balance. So if I'm looking at this project, I see that my budget balance is at $31,000 and change. My expenses year-to-date, this is how much I've spent year-to-date, and this is how much I've spent month-to-date, which in this case looks to be about the same because this is pulling from July. All right, and I don't have any cost share activity. If I had marked the Show Projections or Show Soft Encumbrances, it changes the view a little bit. I basically lose the expenses in year-to-date and month-to-date, and I gain these columns. It would start with, after available balance, I would see my projected earnings, which means that I have $90,000 left for what I expect to pay out in payroll between now and the end of the year. That's what that means, okay? Projected fringe benefits, how much I expect to pay out in fringe on this project between now and the end of the year. It recalculates after every payroll. Then how much I have in soft encumbrances, and then my balance, okay? All right, so you can see that there's it makes a bit of a difference when you either show your balance by projections or not. All right. One thing I wanted to draw your attention to is, because we get questions about this sometimes, is what does the red and black in the positive and negative sign mean in the expenses column? It kind of works the same with revenues and expenses. So anytime you see, these are expenses, so let's talk about expenses. Anytime you see, let's start with black positive. A black positive in this case means I've spent that money. It's an expense. So this $5,498 here and 45 cents means I'm out that money. It's hit my budget balance. My budget is now less, this much. If you see a red negative in the expenses column, it basically means that it's like a reversal of an expense. I have, in this case, $153.54 that has been put back on my expenses, basically, is how to read that, okay? All right. There are two ways to see your budget balance. I just talked about one under the roll-ups and OSR ledger roll-up. You can also see it under the grants tab. And this grants tab has been newly sort of redesigned with the last release. We used to have this grant profile tab up at the top here. Now what we have is grants at the level of the ledger roll-ups, and underneath the grants we have the grant profile, which is basically the same as when it existed up at this level. But in addition, we have this OSR campus report, which is where, say, the OSR payments report lives, and as we develop more reports, we will put some of them under this OSR campus report. But the grant profile page also shows you your budget balance. So if I were to click on the grant profile and search by my project number, I get the same budget balance information that I did from the OSR ledger roll-up. The grant profile page gives you more information, like up at the top it gives you a lot of details about the grant itself, and then just one thing on that page is this ledger roll-up information. So the grant profile page would be a place, it's like a one-stop shop if you're looking for other grant information in addition to your financial information. The difference between the ledger roll-up here and from the OSR ledger roll-up tab is that on the grant profile page you can't change the filter by date. So it's always just showing you a life-to-date balance, all right? You also have the ability on the grant profile page to determine whether you want to see your projected salary and fringe or not. So you can toggle on and off those that show projected and show alerts to determine whether you want to see them in the display. The alerts are things that indicate whether you're spending at a faster or slower rate than your budget on a daily rate, then your budget kind of would drive whether you're going to be over or under by your project end date. All right. Let's see. This is the what the budget, the grant details page shows here. So I click that, and this is what that information shows. All right. Last item I want to talk about, it would be a little bit of a review, but also tell you what is coming. The reports that are useful for and in the works for to help you manage your grants. And we've talked about most of these. These will be the OSR payments report. Talked about that. Shows you all your payments reports, all your payments from sponsors since go live. That's out now. Coming very soon is the OSR invoice listing report. That will show all invoices we sent to sponsors since go live. And then this OSR GL expenses and budget report, what that's going to show is the budget on your project and then what you've spent on that project based on the GL actuals ledger. So it's like really what's posted, your budget minus really what's posted and what you have left, okay? And those should be coming out very soon. All right, the next is the series of queries that I talked about that will show your open transactions. Those are coming out very soon. And then we've got coming out more in the September 2016 timeframe is the funding end date notification report. That will indicate the employees on a project if they're getting close to their funding ending on that project or if it already has ended. Payroll accounting report, we talked about that. It shows you all your payroll and any payroll adjustments. And then the salary funding report will show you how employees are getting funded, and that should be coming out. If it's not out already, it's within days. Okay, so that's what I have for you. Just to summarize what we talked about. We talked about how you find open requisitions, purchase orders, and vouchers. Queries coming out very soon, and I showed you some additional tools. I showed you 3 ways for how a voucher can get paid. You have the voucher inquiry, info cord, and some queries. We talked about the payments report, which shows you your payments from sponsors. The payroll and accounting information report, which shows you all payroll and payroll adjustments. 2 ways to find cash balances, the GL ledger inquiry and the cash balance query. And we looked at how to find budget balances, which is on the Department Accounting tab. On the info port side, you can either use the OSR ledger roll-up or the grant profile page. And then lastly, I mentioned all the reports that are either out now or they are coming. All right, and just a reminder that in addition to this PowerPoint deck, there is this resource that lists all the reports that I just talked about. That's also posted on CC Info. So you'll have this PowerPoint deck, the list of these reports, and also a recording of this webinar will be on CC Info under Useful Reports and Queries for Research Administrators. And with that, I would thank you for your attention to this webinar. Thank you very much.